Welcome to the Desert Gunnery Book Club. I'm barking madly. Well, figured I know I was going to be taking breaks here and there, so I brought a bunch of the books I've read so far this year. I'm not trying to do the 52 and 52 because, frankly, there's no way in hell I'd get it done. But I have been reading a good bit. The first one, I didn't bring it along to describe it or anything like that because I'm not embarrassed to have read it, but it's trite. And that was that Hunger Games book. My wife really loved it, wanted me to read it, and it's kind of like The Running Man, but for teenagers, and without the fucking glowing vampire, so not too bad. Anyhow, into the meat of what I've been reading. Okay. First thing I got was a Christmas present. Cody Lundine's When All Hell Breaks Loose, The Stuff You Need to Survive When Disaster Strikes. Good book, lots of basic information in it. Some of it I knew, some of it I didn't. One kind of annoying thing is he constantly refers to 98 Degrees, The Art of Keeping Your Ass Alive, his other book. What's his face? Burrs did a quick review on that. There's an awful lot of stuff in here. I mean, everything from making a latrine to piss tubes and whatnot, carrying water and all that stuff. Boiling, how to clean water and all that other stuff. It's got a lot of solid information. It's definitely written in a different style. Overall, I like it. But if you ever read the book Zen and the Art of Volkswagen Maintenance, it was kind of a knockoff of the motorcycle maintenance book. It has kind of goofy artwork in it. It's entertaining. I mean, it's easy reading. Probably the kind of thing you need to read several times to actually be able to successfusly get it all. Another book. This is nonfiction. Another nonfiction. SEAL Team 6 by Howard Wosden. It's his stories about he was a SEAL Team 6 member back in the 90s, I guess. He was actually in Mogadishu during Black Hawk Down and all that. Interesting book. Yeah, I don't know how much. I mean, you assume it's true or you have to, but they do some fantastic stuff, and some of the stuff some of the stuff I really, really liked about it was the fact that he points out that SEALs are humans. Some of their long-range sniping work that they did, he talks about. That was pretty cool. Solid book. It's probably on discount by now. I think I got that. I bought it in October, but didn't get around to reading it until after Christmas. Next book. This is some really light reading. Applied Ballistics for Long-Range Shooting by Brian Litz. I haven't read every single page of it, mainly because lots and lots of it is just technical information on various bullets. But up to about here, I did read. It's really good. It's got, if you have any interest in shooting long range, and by long range, I'm not meaning 600 to 800 yards. I'm talking 1,000, 1,500 yards or even longer. Basically, the way he defines long range shooting is when your bullet is in the transonic range, when it's going from supersonic down into subsonic. Lots and lots of good information. I could probably do 10 or 15 videos on that book if I really wanted to. I mean, there's a ton of information. There is a lot of math if you choose to read it, if you choose to go into it. But you can go, he says do this calculation, which also the book supplies a little a CD that has a ballistic solver in it, a calculator. You take this, if this is what you're doing, and this and this and this, you just do this calculation, this calculation, this calculation. That's all you need to know. And it's just plug and chug. There's no real hard work to it. If you want to look at the math, he includes, not all of it by any stretch, but he includes a good bit, just enough if you are at all mathematically inclined at all. There's the stuff there that you can actually look into. Now, let's see, where's the... Yeah, one more book. Oh, here it is. And thanks to our neighborhood Lobstermen, 10 Hours Till Dawn. Finished that a couple of weeks ago. That was a really good book. I lived in Rhode Island for a couple of years, so it was kind of cool seeing, Scituate. I think they mentioned Fall River and all that stuff. It was neat. You've got Frank Quirk, what's his name, Charlie Bucko, Mike Paradis, and all the other guys, and it was interesting. But I mean, after a while, I'd read this after I watched all of Mike's videos on the can-do, and that's depressing. I mean, just, you know what's going to happen. You're just saying, I don't like reading about people dying. Don't like seeing people dying. It's interesting. I mean, it definitely you've probably heard Mike talking about the Chester polling. They go into some detail about it. Blackburn, they go into it. The way it goes about it, or if you saw Mike's video, he just goes pretty much chronologically on what happens. This book does, although every time he goes into the book, describes what's going on, then he talks about something else in the past that has direct relevance to it and explains either the people, as a culture out, on the fishermen's, the sailors out there, or some of the missions or adventures that the folks had been on. It's good. It gets a little bit long because, every time Charlie Bucko picked up the radio to use this, which, if you remember back, there was a story back on his 40, when he was on a 44 back on, just sometimes it gets a little bit long-winded like that, but at the same time, it really gets you into why the people did what they did, why they didn't do what they didn't do, the limits of the equipment, the limits of the people, and it is an amazing story, and it does need to be told. I lived out in Rhode Island back in 84, 85. The only storm of any merit that we had was Hurricane Gloria. And living in Rhode Island, it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, moving forward, I've got some other books I'm actually reading. Slow reading. Federalist Papers. This is your fault, Lamb Dog. It's interesting, but at the same time, it's dry. I don't mind reading nonfiction, clearly, but reading stuff from the 1700s, even 1700s fiction is a little bit difficult to read. 1700s discussion, politics, and theory, it's a little rough. I'm only about 50 pages into it, but still going. Oh, crap, I lost the bookmark. Anyway, this is one of the first of the Foxfire books that I was talking about. This is a mixture. It's all nonfiction. It's got things like a story about this one woman. She's living all by herself, and her husband's died, her kids all moved on or whatever. Actually, I don't think she actually had kids. But she's talking about how when they were so poor that one year for Christmas they each got an orange and a piece of candy, and it was the best Christmas ever. Also goes into details about how to build a log cabin from scratch. If you have access to a sawmill, it gives you instructions. If you don't, it gives you instructions. I mean, it just, at roughly, page 166 out of 380. It's slow going. The technical stuff is slower reading because I actually read it and try to absorb it. The anecdotal stuff, which is the stories that the folks have to tell, that reads pretty well. It's really interesting and helps keep it moving. The next thing I'm going to be reading up on is called Brunswick Stew. It's 2 pounds cooked ground beef and a whole bunch of other stuff. On deck, like I said, I'm reading, at one point I was reading 3 books, the Can-Do story, the Foxfire, and the Federalist Papers. But I'm going to finish up those 2 before I move on. The next one is AntiFederalist, and again, I blame you, Lamb Dog. And was it Red Tony? One of you guys made the comment on one of mine. The man who mistook his wife for a hat. So pick that up. Going to be reading it. I also picked up another copy of Lucifer's Hammer. I mentioned it in one of my videos. It's a science fiction story, kind of, but it has an awful lot to do about prepping and just the thought process on it, but not from the current, 90s and 2000s kind of point of view. The book was written, I think, back in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's actually a really good book. I can't remember much about it. It's probably been 10 years since I read it, which is why I picked it up again. And there's some other interesting. One of the main reasons I picked it up is one of the main characters has a series of books that's basically everything you need to know. Kind of like an encyclopedia, but practically useful shit. I don't think it was the Foxfire books, but he talks about it. And one of the reasons I want to read the book is to find that list of books, because again, that might be something to either for me to read or at least put the information out there for everybody else that's interested in such things. So anyway, this is a tip-top and a-do from the Desert Gunnery Book Club. Hope you've enjoyed. Ta-ta!